Okay, I think let's get started.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the third webinar by Mashood Alam, titled Devise Solutions to Determine Feasibility. This webinar is brought to you by Open Silicon Valley. A little bit about Mashood Alam. Mashood Alam is a Senior Director of Innovation and Digital Transformation at SAP's Design and Co-Innovation Center. He drives co-innovation and digital transformation, innovation thinking, innovation center setup, and out-of-the-boxes approaches to identifying and solving problems by leveraging cutting-edge technologies, including machine learning, Internet of Things, blockchain, computer visions, chatbots, cloud, big data, and mobile networks. He excels at orchestrating and leading highly immersive engagements with C-level executives and directors to align strategy and generate ideas for new business models. Thank you so much, Mashood, for hosting the third webinar of the Design Thinking series. And without further ado, the floor is yours.
All right, thank you very much, Farhan, and welcome everyone. Let me start sharing my screen. Give me 1 second. All right, so I hope you're able to see my screen now. Let me just do the slideshow. Okay, here we go. So as you know, this is the third session. We already covered in the first 3 sessions the introduction to design thinking and to the Transform 3+1 framework. On the second session, we focused on the stage 1, which is understand problem. And the third session is today, where we're going to be exploring how we can devise different solutions. In the subsequent sessions, we will be covering the business aspect and risk aspect. Once again, a quick reminder, by attending all the sessions, you get a chance to win the book. Or you can become an open member and you'll be guaranteed to get a book. And depending on your engagement throughout these sessions, I'll be selecting one participant who will get a personalized copy of my book as well. So before we, as you know, I think those who have already attended, this is an engaging session. So Farhan, if you can launch the first poll to understand how many people actually attended the previous sessions, that'll be great. So please spend like 10 seconds and then choose one of the options, whether you attended or watched the recording of both the previous sessions, or just the first one, or just the second one, or you did not get a chance to attend or watch either of the sessions, and this is the first time. Just spend 5 seconds to select the one quickly. And Farhan, if you can, then please show the results and share with the participants as well. Okay, Farhan.
All right, sharing the results now.
Okay, I hope that you guys are able to see the poll results. In the previous session, it wasn't possible, but I hope you can now. As you can see, about 60% of you have attended or watched both the previous session, which is great. About 2 of you attended the first one only. So welcome back after skipping the last one. That's not a problem. You can go back and watch the previous recording. And then the 3 of you have actually attended the previous session, which covered the recap of the first one. So I think you're good. Feel free to go back to the first session and then review it. And then 2 of you are totally new, so welcome. And I'll try to make sure that we do a quick recap this time so that you can at least see where we are and how we're going. So we can close the poll now, Farhan. Thank you very much. Just a quick, as you know, at the end of the each session, I ask you to provide feedback. This will be the norm today as well. But this is a quick response from the previous survey that I conducted, and I take the input very seriously to adjust these sessions to your needs. So as you can see, the previous session was about understanding the problem by grasping desirability. And we explored the importance of user research. So as you can see, I think, I hope most of the folks actually found it to be extremely important or even indispensable this stage. So I'm glad that you all feel that way. And obviously tools and templates are good to have, and they will be a guide for you. But the importance of user research cannot be overstated. What worked well in the last session was, I'm glad that you guys gained a lot of knowledge and enjoyed the session. Thank you very much for all the great feedback. I'll try to answer the question and share real life examples as much as I can to make an improvement. These are some suggestions of how we can improve. So I think you can see that folks are asking for real-time examples and more collaboration. I know it's very challenging. Generally, these sessions are conducted in an in-person environment where we actually engage with activities together. We actually do user research, mock interviews, and all those aspects, and ideation, as I'll talk about today, together. So in this online session, it becomes really challenging. I tried my best on the first session to try for a few minutes the mural collaboration tool, but it doesn't really work for an audience, a large audience. But we'll try to make the best out of it. I've incorporated polls and questions and also surveys in the middle today, so you will have the chance to collaborate. Feel free to keep sending messages to each other which are relevant to the session or to the topic. And if you have any question for me, feel free to enter in Q&A. We're gonna address those at the end of the year. Now, I'm gonna just highlight one of the participants, a 15-year-old Arham Rahil Khan from Dubai, who attended the first session. He actually leveraged the session, and I got a message from his father this morning that he took the content and created a presentation and presented to his school during this lockdown, and he got a virtual STAR digital learning program certificate from his school. So I have shout out to Arham, great job. I really love how youth is gaining benefit from these sessions as well. So just quickly recap. So what I'll do is I'll be very quick in the recap, because if you want to go deeper into it, you can go back to the previous sessions after the session. So just a quick summary, get everybody on the same page is when we talk about innovation, it's about creativity and execution together. Creativity is helping your human centricity to find problems before you start solving them. So I think, again, iterating is stressing the importance of finding the problems before you end up solving it. We also talked about how you can become more creative, and this is one way of many. If you just, while you are ideating and thinking new choices, do not apply the convergent thinking at the same time. If you just do that, you will see the increase in your creativity as well. Design thinking brings on the design side the form and function together. So it's not just fixing on how beautiful the product is going to be or the solution, but it should serve a purpose. On the thinking side, it brings both creative thinking and business thinking together. In the future, it's more important to bring creativity into your business rather than just running an efficient business. So I think design thinking is a great tool to do that. Another aspect of design thinking is these three circles of the Venn diagram. Focus on desirability from the end user perspective first, and that's what we addressed in last session. Then go into feasibility and viability. Again, reiterating, apply the double diamond approach of exploring the problem space first, and narrowing it down to what problem you're trying to solve for the user before you start generating ideas for the solution. And here is a quick summary of the Transform 3+1 framework. We addressed the first stage, which is desirability, in last session. And then I'll quickly summarize that. There are in the last session, I shared with you 3 phases of user research. Does anyone remember? Please feel free to use your chat window right now and enter the 3 phases of user research. And I'm going to check quickly whether there are any messages. And does anyone remember the 3 phases of user research? Feel free to use your chat window to enter that. Okay, well, let me try to share that with you. It's planning, observation, and engagement. In planning, it's very important to do your research, both secondary and primary. Look for folks who are extreme users as well. Do 3 to 5 sets, or select 3 to 5 at least for primary research. When you're observing, defer your judgment, be genuinely empathetic and curious about the predicament of the user. In engagement phase, importance of asking the questions, the right questions in the right manner, open-ended questions. Understanding the user's story is very important. So don't just be a questionnaire, but essentially ask questions in a natural conversing manner. So again, go to where the user is. Don't just do it online. Well, I know these days it's very hard, but observe the user in their context. Go to their homes, workplace, wherever they are, to really see the context. Bring those insights into a room where your team is sitting to then interpret those observations and findings so that you can derive insights across many different users. A lot of times, do not assume that the user would know what their challenges are. A lot of times they do, but sometimes they don't, because when you are doing certain things for years at an end, you don't get to understand the challenges the assumptions you are operating under. So it's always very good to go over those assumptions and go peek deeper into it. I shared a few of those templates, from a stakeholder map to empathy map, persona, user journey, and user's perspective. So leverage them as you see fit. The more details are described in my book as well. Rahil, again, Rahil Bodla, as always, he provided a very profound summary of his insight that he gleaned out of last week's session. So we captured pretty much all the aspects of it. And again, just to reiterate, when you are conducting user research session, be mindful of how much time you are consuming in speaking. It's about the user. Let the user speak. And in general, the guidelines is user should be speaking 95% of the time. So your goal is to just build a rapport and start the user talking, right? Coming back, this is the overall Transform 3+1. And today, what we'll be doing is we'll be building on the user research understanding problem to go into what are the different techniques and steps from ideation, prioritization, to really grasp feasibility. Now, be very alert, because at end of pretty much every of these steps, I'll be asking you some questions in the poll or asking you to enter in the messages. So just be attentive about what about. So when you are excited about an idea, you're trying to solve a problem for the user. I'm just looking at the time over here. Okay, so we're great. So the recap was quick today. So that's how we're going to continue. It's actually not about your idea at all. It's about users' job to be done. And I think this is a very, very important concept of job to be done. And you need to understand, what are you trying to help the user do, right? So for that, I think it will be best that I share with you this 3-minute, 4-minute video by Clay Christensen, the late, great Clay Christensen. He wrote the Innovator's Dilemma book as well. So I would encourage you to check out his work. And he has done tremendous contributions in innovation. So he explained and he coined this job to be done concept. And let me just play his 4-minute video. I think that would be much more insightful than I could ever do justice with. So just pay attention to what he says with an amazing milkshake example.
We decided that the way we teach marketing is at the core of what makes motivation difficult to achieve. The most helpful way we've thought of it so far is that we actually hire products to do things for us. And understanding what job we have to do in our lives for which we would hire a product is really the key to cracking this problem of motivating customers to buy what we're offering. So I wanted just to tell you a story about a project we did for one of the big fast food restaurants. They were trying to goose up the sales of their milkshakes. They had just studied this problem up the gazoo. They brought in customers who fit the profile of the quintessential milkshake consumer. They'd give them samples and ask, could you tell us how we can improve our milkshakes so you buy more of them? Do you want it chocolatey or cheaper, chunky or chewier? They get very clear feedback. They would then improve the milkshake on those dimensions, and it had no impact on sales or profits whatsoever. So one of our colleagues went in with a different question on his mind, and that was, I wonder what job arises in people's lives that cause them to come to this restaurant to hire a milkshake. So we stood in a restaurant for 18 hours one day and just took very careful data. What time did they buy these milkshakes? What were they wearing? Were they alone? Did they buy other food with it? Did they eat it in the restaurant or drive off with it? It turned out that nearly half of the milkshakes were sold before 8 o'clock in the morning. The people who bought them were always alone. It was the only thing they bought, and they all got in the car and drove off with it. So to figure out what job they were trying to hire it to do, we came back the next day and stood outside the restaurant so we could confront these folks as they left, milkshake in hand. And in language that they could understand, we essentially asked, excuse me, please, but I got to sort this puzzle out. What job were you trying to do for yourself that caused you to come here and hire that milkshake? And they'd struggle to answer, so we'd then help them by asking other questions like, well, think about the last time you were in the same situation, needing to get the same job done, but you didn't come here to hire a milkshake. What did you hire? And then as we put all of their answers together, it became clear that they all had the same job to do in the morning, and that is they had a long and boring drive to work. And they just needed something to do while they drove to keep the commute interesting. One hand had to be on the wheel, but somebody had given them another hand and there wasn't anything in it. And they just needed something to do while they drove. They weren't hungry yet, but they knew they'd be hungry by 10 o'clock. So they also wanted something that would just go down there and stay for their morning. Good question. What do I hire when I do this job? You know, I've never framed the question that way before, but last Friday, I hired a banana to do the job. Take my word for it, never hire bananas. They're gone in 3 minutes. You're hungry by 7:30. If you promise not to tell my wife, I'd probably hire donuts twice a week, but they don't do it well either. They're gone fast. They crumb all over my clothes. They get my fingers gooey. Sometimes I hire bagels, but as you know, they're so dry and tasteless. Then I have to steer the car with my knees while I'm putting jam on them. And then if the phone rings, we got a crisis. I remember I hired a Snickers bar once, but I felt so guilty. I've never hired Snickers again. Let me tell you, when I come here and hire this milkshake, it is so viscous that it easily takes me 20 minutes to suck it up that thin little straw. Who cares what the ingredients are? I don't. All I know is I'm full all morning and it fits right here in my cup holder. Well, it turns out that the milkshake does the job better than any of the competitors, which in the customer's minds are not Burger King milkshakes, but it's bananas, donuts, bagels, Snickers bars, coffee, and so on. But I hope you can see how, if you understand the job, how to improve the product becomes just obvious.
All right. So this is amazing, Clay Christensen. So a couple of things that I took, and feel free to write in the message, what are some of the key insights that you derived out of it? I mean, for me, it was not just the concept of your product and service is there to help the customer do a job, but also the context in which the user is. If you were just doing surveys online, if you were just trying to fiddle with the features of the product, like the viscosity or the ingredients, you probably wouldn't really hit it unless you spend time, observe the users, what time they are using the product, what are they doing and what's their context, they're driving, and so on and so forth. And this is just amazing that that you will glean so much insights. So what I essentially do in my book is, and I capture this idea of jobs to be done in this concept of helping the user hit the target. What that means at the basic level, what is the job they're trying to do? In real life, when we are actually doing a lot of these ideas, that job is part of a higher level of goal that the user is trying to do. And then that leads to a higher level, even higher level of vision that the user might have, might not be explicitly stated, but think about how you are helping the user achieve what they're trying to achieve, right? And I'll be going deeper into it in the next session when you talk about the value proposition. Now, when you have, hopefully based on your user research and your observations, understood what the user's trying to do, what is the job they're trying to finish, what is the goal they're trying to accomplish, what is the vision they're trying to realize, now you start ideating on how can you help the user hit that target better, cheaper, faster, or easier way. These are the 3 ways, or 4 ways rather, that you can help create the value. And we're going to be going that into later on, but this concept is very important to explain before you jump into the device solution and ideation part. So always think about how you're helping the user hit the target. So before the ideation, Farhan, if you could run the poll, which is titled Before Ideation, quickly, and all the participants just look at the poll and answer the questions. Check whichever statements you think are true about before ideation, that your idea is most important for ideation. Hitting the target means how you could sell your idea. User's job to be done is critical to know before ideation. The goal of ideation is to find how to help the user finish the job. Value is when you enable the user hit the target in a better, faster, cheaper, and easier way. So just spend like 10 seconds and check all those options which you think are true. I'll give you 5 more seconds. All right, Farhan, if we have some responses, feel free to share the poll with me as well as with the participants. All right, let's see the results. All right, so awesome. I think 22 out of you were right that your idea is not the most important for ideation. The most important part is the job that the user is trying to do. Second one was hitting the target means how you could sell your idea. Actually, that is not true. Hitting the idea means you need to help the user solve their problem, not necessarily sell the idea at this point. The third one was user's job to be done is critical to know. It is absolutely true. If you don't know how your idea is going to help the user do his or her job, you're probably not going to hit the mark. So that is true. The goal of ideation is to find how to help the user finish the job. Absolutely. Whenever you, as we will go through this ideation very shortly, you have to think about how those ideas are helping the user finish the job. And finally, the value is when you enable the user hit the target in a better, faster, cheaper, or easier way. Absolutely. At the end of the day, whatever your idea is, if it is not letting the user do the job better, faster, cheaper, or easier, probably why would the user actually imagine if somebody comes to you and tries to sell a product which solves a problem, whatever that problem is, maybe, I don't know, cutting vegetables in your kitchen, and that product is not giving you a way to cut it better way, maybe more different designs, faster or cheaper or easier. Why would you buy that? You would not buy it. So think about it. Put yourself in the user's shoes. Again, empathy is very important. Try to see what the user is trying to do, and then see whether the product and service is gonna help the user do the job. So yeah, thank you very much for your response. This was awesome. So Farhan, we can close the poll now. And then we will go to the first, actually, if you look at, we covered the 5 steps in the understand problem phase. This is the step number 6 of the framework. It's called ideation, obviously. So now that we have understood the problem from the user's perspective, we are jumping into ideation. There are certain rules for brainstorming. Ideation means generating, and again, we are in the exploratory phase, the divergent thinking aspects. So you have to go for quantity. quality of ideas do not matter at this point. So again, when we will do shortly a quick ideation for some of the topics that our participants have shown an interest in, then at that point, do not judge. Just go for defer your judgment, and for that topic, generate as many ideas as possible. I've run sessions for ideation in which we generated more than 200 ideas in a span of 20 minutes. Obviously, there are many people over there to generate ideas. Encourage wild ideas. Do not hold yourself back. Again, a lot of, as we discussed in the previous session, some of the biggest and most successful companies were based on a really wild and crazy idea. So do encourage that. Do not hold yourself back from coming up with that. Other part is that build on each other's ideas. Do not be shy to take an aspect of an idea from this person, from that person, and then combine it to build a new idea. Also, and obviously when we are in a room session where we actually do these immersive sessions, we have to kind of be mindful of how we converse with each other, and make sure that everyone has the opportunity to speak, and try to be visual. I mean, some ideas are very hard to translate into words, and they're very easily conveyed by a diagram. So just feel free to draw that well. So these are some of the mindsets that you should keep in mind. Go for quantity, wild ideas, defer judgment, and focus on topic, build on each other's ideas, and be respectful for others' ideas, and be visual. So just keep that in mind. There are many ways in which you can brainstorm over new ideas, and there are tons and tons of ways. I mean, a couple of them I've highlighted over here. For example, when you are in a room, you can assign somebody to be a dreamer, another person to be a realist, and a third person to be a pessimist. What happens is that when you are generating those ideas, you take on the hat for the dreamer, the realist, and pessimist, and then you'll be surprised how many interesting ideas will emerge. Also, another way of brainstorming is, how would a superhero do it? Regardless of whatever superhero you think about it. And that also generates some really crazy and wild ideas. Another very interesting and approach, which is oxymoronic, is introduce constraints. You would be surprised, and I run a very interesting activity of a restaurant example. I won't be able to do it, but essentially, I introduce concerns. So I ask each of the teams to come up with 10 items that are absolutely critical to open a restaurant, and then order them in from the most important to the least important. And sometimes the most important are funding, location, chef, ambience, and many other things, quality of the food, ingredients. And then after they have done that activity, I'll take away the top 3. You're only left with the bottom 7. Now come up with the concept of a restaurant. And we've seen so many amazing concepts emerge from all the way from an open kitchen where people bring their ingredients to cook, to a kitchen on wheels, and many other things. So you'd be surprised. And essentially, and that's why this design thinking is kind of more conducive to an in-person session. Another approach is a logo battle. So, and I'll be hopefully using this as well shortly when I ask you to ideate on some of those problems. Think about the most important and valued and loving brand that you have, business. And it may not be most recognized brands, but it could be a spa in your neighborhood, which provides excellent service and knows you personally, and you love that business much more. And then you ask yourself, how would that business solve that problem? So I think that also initiate a lot of ideas. The goal is to generate tons of ideas with many of these techniques. These ideas, then once you have it on the wall, you start seeing themes emerging. So you cluster ideas into specific themes. And here's an example for one of the ideation sessions that we were running for one of the projects. And you can see on the right side of the wall, there are like tons of ideas mentioned over here. We use Post-its as well, and we describe it. And each idea is unique in its own. And then we start to, you can see that people are voting over here, but we'll be going into prioritization subsequently. This is another example from another exercise and engagement I did with another customer in the Middle East, in fact. And so many ideas were generated and clustered into specific themes. So the goal of ideation is to generate lots of ideation. So now, Farhan, if you can just open up the next poll, which is called ideation, and participants, please spend 30 seconds to answer the question in the poll. So here, again, check all the statements which you think are true about ideation. So the key rule of ideation is to evaluate quality of ideas. We should be open to build on each other's ideas, stay away from wild ideas. Clustering similar ideas helps bring clarity. Critical thinking is important during ideation. So check all the aspects, all the statements which are true. Spend 10 more seconds. 5 more seconds. All right, Farhan, let me know when you have some responses and then share the poll results. Okay, here it is. So the first one, key rule of ideation is to evaluate quality of ideas. Actually, this is not true. As I mentioned, the goal is to go for quantity, not quality. This is the divergent thinking part of it. And you are supposed to generate ideas, not critique them at this point. The second one was we should be open to build on each other's idea. Absolutely. So a couple of you think that stealing ideas is not good. Well, actually, in innovation space, you have to build on each other's ideas. It's really hard to actually pinpoint whose idea was at the end of these sessions, because most of the concepts that we build has elements of ideas from every one of them. Stay away from wild ideas. Well, actually, you should not be staying away from wild ideas. Again, this is not about quality. This is about generating wild ideas. And a lot of times I've seen that an idea which may have seemed like a wacky idea came out to be one of the great inspiration for something awesome. Clustering similar ideas help bring clarity. Yes, of course. As I mentioned, I think clustering ideas into themes would really help you see that it's very rare that I've seen that after an ideation session, even with a handful of people, that each idea was just unique in its own. They're always, you will see, and you'll be surprised to see that how much all of you kind of think alike. And then you always want to encourage people to really think differently, right? So that's why the clustering kind of brings, because once at the end of these ideation sessions, we have like hundreds of ideas on the wall. How could you possibly like go through and understand it? So it's always when you cluster them together, you try to see with clarity. And then finally, critical thinking is important during ideation. Well, actually, this was a kind of a curveball, and I understand that a lot of you kind of might have misunderstood this, but you want to take away your critical thinking hat and put it somewhere in the cupboard, because it's about not critical thinking. It's about creative thinking. Think whatever. Imagine a child. I used that example in the first session. Children actually take bottle and then convert that into a spaceship, and then they are in an imaginary world. You should be encouraging that. You should not be critical thinking, applying critical thinking over there. And similarly, when you are doing this ideation session, you should keep your critical thinking out of the way. The goal is to generate ideas, not critique. That will be the next step. Well, so thank you very much for your feedback. I think this is great. Farhan, we can close the poll now. All right. Here I would like to just share, we had one of our participants, Rahil Bodla, who's a business success coach. He kind of shared, we had a lot of input for him after the last sessions. He took that input as well and converted it. So let me just give you a brief idea of what Rahil's idea was. So he's a business success, he runs a business success consulting to executives and managers for large and small companies. The problem statement for him was he gets a lot of leads. Leads is essentially anything that somebody has shown interest in his business, but he has some challenges in converting those leads into sales as business success coach. So these are some of the comments that I mentioned to him as well. That his ability to convert leads and ideas dependent on your ability to understand customers' needs and position your offerings in a manner that solves that need. Again, coming back to job to be done. What job your customers need to do for which they will hire you as a business success coach, and what is the best way to convey to your customers that your services will help them do the job better. Now, before we jump into asking you for ideas, I want to, Farhan, if you can open Rahil's line. Rahil Bodla, hopefully you are on the line. And Rahil actually sent me this document as well. So I want Rahil to not just read through this, but just convey the key messages within less than a minute. Who are the stakeholders? What are the questions you would ask them? And then what are the assumptions you're making, so that all the participants are aware of that, and then focus on the user needs that you have highlighted over here. And then we will jump into ideation, and we will get ideas from all the participants very shortly. So Rahil, can you speak now?
Yes, sir. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. So just quickly, within a minute, summarize your problem statement.
Awesome. Thank you very much. I'll be concise within the 60 seconds. These sessions are really, really very amazing for me. So I got response from 4 respondents on the idea, on my business idea that I'm currently doing as business. So converging all those, I got the inputs into how I should inculcate that into my business. I came to know that the user needs, there are 3 types of users who I interact with. And the user needs, the first of them is basically an aspiring business user who, and that person needs to grow his business, that is the what. To take it to the next level of growth, the why. Exactly, this is the first statement. That's the first type of user that I have. The second type is a struggling business user. And he or she needs to make his or her business profitable to survive the business, to keep their business afloat. And that's the second type of user that I have. And the third one is a startup founder who needs clarity to complete his or her business plan to start his or her business. And these are the 3 types of users. And that's how I understood to converge what I learned from you, that to understand and put the who and what they're trying to do and why they're trying to do it. Did I convey what you were looking for?
I think this is great. So Rahil, thank you very much for being in the spotlight and sharing your problem statement. So I hope participants, you have heard and seen what Rahil is trying to do. Now it's your time. And before you jump into this survey, let me just open this survey up on my end and then tell you how to fill this. So once you click on this link, and I'll be sharing that link shortly, what you have to do is you have to select Rahil Bodla, and then whatever ideas come to your mind, just keep entering 1 idea per, if you have the space for 10 ideas. So at least 1 you have to submit to Rahil, and go as many as wild as possible, submit that idea. And then you can, once you have submitted, I'll just do a test over here, I'll show you. Once you submit this, you will see this link, submit another. If you have more than 10 ideas, go back, select Rahil, and then submit again. Okay, so what I'll do is now I will try to share that in the chat, this link. So I want everyone to spend 3 minutes now, click on this link, select Rahil, and then enter ideas, generate any ideas, do not hold back. And I am sharing over here in the screen that what is the user need he's trying to solve. I'll be keep reading that. You guys keep generating ideas. Go now. An aspiring business owner who needs to grow the business to take it to the next level of growth. A struggling business owner needs to make his business profitable to survive. A startup founder needs clarity to complete his business plan, to start his business. So these are the kind of 3 target personas that Rahil is going after. Go ahead and keep entering all your ideas for Rahil. I'll give you 2.5 minutes remaining. Keep generating. Do not hold yourself back. Do not think that your idea is stupid or crazy. Write it down. A time will come when we will prioritize those ideas. But at this point, just quantity matters, quality doesn't matter. All right, we are getting some responses. I know it's not very easy, but feel free to just give any ideas to Raheel. All right, we already have like a few responses over here, which is great. You can see the ideas growing. That's nice. Get to know your customer for the starters, put in previous successful examples, shape offering better. All right, carry on. That's good. Hold Zoom social hours so people get to know you. Focus on one target segment. Okay. So yeah, keep generating a lot of ideas. That's great. So we'll what I'll do is, and I'll give you one more minute to put your ideas in. I know it's not the ideal way of generating ideas, but let's help out Raheel over here as well to generate a lot of ideas. And I'll be summarizing as soon as I get all these responses. I will be sending to your way so that you can take advantage of them.
Mashood,
Yep.
on the chat window, can you select to all panelists and attendees and repost the link, please?
Oh, I'm really sorry about that. Oh, maybe I missed it over here. Okay. Okay. Oh, that was the reason. Okay. So now let me then give you 2 more minutes. Actually, I've just sent you all the panelists and attendees. So click on this and then share your ideas with Raheel. Now I had a couple of other folks who had shared their input, but apologies to them. I don't believe that we will have enough time today to go through them as well, but I will maybe send out later on the link for others to provide input to you afterwards. Okay, is anybody having some challenges opening the link that I shared? Let me try once more. Okay, it's opening on my end, so try again, please. Oh, okay. So you have to just copy and paste it, the link, unfortunately. That's the best way, I think, unless there's another way. Okay, let me just again see how is the response rate going. All right, so we've gotten like a lot of ideas over here. So Raheel, just within like 2 minutes, 3 minutes, we have gotten 16 responses. And you can see there are like more than probably 50 ideas already collected. So I really appreciate every one of you. Feel free to build on each other's ideas. I'm sharing some of those ideas here. Amazing. I really love this. I really love the ideation part. So you can see, Raheel, great that you will have a lot of ideas. Okay, awesome. So now I want everyone to then come back to the presentation. You can continue providing ideas to Raheel afterwards, and we'll continue. But come back to the presentation. We're going to continue now. As I mentioned, apologies to the other 2 participants who had shown interest in generating ideas for their business, but I don't believe that we'll have time. We are already like 45 minutes into it. I think this session today is going to go, I guess, a little longer, but still we won't have time. So is everybody back here? Just say yes in the chat bot, in the chat box, and then we're gonna continue. So I want you to close your survey browser for ideas for Raheel and just come back to the presentation. I'm sharing the screen now. So what we have just done is generated tremendous amount of ideas, and you can see within the span of like 4 minutes, you're able to generate more than 50 ideas. So this is the power of bringing different minds together to help to solve this idea. And I'm sure the next steps, I'm going to tell you how we actually take all those ideas, help in prioritization, then what are the next steps? So that's the next part of the session today. So prioritization. So there are many ways that you can prioritize. These are some of the most widely used convergent techniques. Once you have all these ideas, you will put them on the wall, you will cluster them into themes, and then for each of the themes, you will go, either you will give 3 to 5 voting dots to each one of the participants, and then ask them to, hey, use your voting dots to put on the best ideas. You can use all your voting dots into one theme as well. You can also use a 2x2 matrix, and I'll be sharing some example. And you can also use a more complex evaluation criteria. I've used all of these and some others too, but these are some of the most widely used. So here is an example. You can see that you can just draw a very quick 2x2 matrix. On the vertical side is the value to the user or value to the business of the user. And on the horizontal side, you can have feasibility. You can start now converging, thinking about how easy it is to do, implement that idea. And once you have that, then you will actually know that what are the most practical ideas, which have the most likelihood of delivering value to the users, as well as, or perhaps the most easy to implement to go forward with. And I think you will get an idea of which one is the top. So top right is generally the one which is considered that, okay, focus on these ideas. And this is some example from my previous workshops as well. So when we actually go and do that, we start clustering it and then we putting it in a business context. You can see that it is a combination of voting as well as now combining. So you can combine all these things. The more important part was separating divergent thinking from convergent thinking. Once you have generated tons of ideas clustered into themes, now you are prioritizing them to see where you can move forward. So now, Farhan, if you can quickly open the next poll, which is called prioritization. I have a question for the participants. All right, so participants, which dimensions could be used for prioritizing ideas? So think about this 2x2 matrix, right? So what are some of the dimensions that you think would be applicable to be used? Value to user, business value to, and select as many as you deem relevant. Business value to us as a team, technical feasibility, expected time to build, cultural fit of the idea in user's context, business value to the user or the customer, environmental impact. What are the dimensions do you think could be used for prioritization at this stage? So you have like 10 seconds. All right, 5 seconds. Okay, so Farhan, if we have some responses, feel free to share the results of the poll. All right, so value to the user, absolutely. So value to the user is actually the most important parameter that you have to, dimension that you have to use for evaluating your ideas. Business value to us, that was a tricky question I intentionally put in. At this point, you don't want to look at business value to us. That means as a team. A lot of times we fall into this trap that we started evaluating ideas based on how beneficial is that idea for us. Actually, when you are ideating and you're converging on a specific idea, always keep customer centricity in mind. Think about business value to the user customer. That was the kind of a sixth point, as you can see, 87%, and that's the right one. You shouldn't be evaluating based on business value to us at this point. Technical feasibility, obviously, yes, you need to see which ideas you have some idea that yeah, these ones are doable based on the resources you have, based on the skills you have. And I think that's a good one. Expected time to build, yes, I think that's another part. If an idea requires you to spend 3 years in making, you have to kind of see whether you have enough funding to go about doing that. And maybe it is, but yeah, it's an important consideration. Cultural fit of the idea to the user's context is absolutely important. There are certain ideas which might work in certain cultures and which may not. Again, that comes down to your understanding of your end user and in his or her context, keeping cultural sensitivities in mind. So I think those aspects are important. Business value to user and and customer is absolutely the right dimension to use. Environmental impact, yeah. I mean, if some ideas have positive environmental impact, then obviously that might become a value proposition for your business too, and which we'll be covering in the next session. Or if it has a detrimental environmental impact, you have to reconsider, well, what's the benefit then? As you have to be a conscientious business as you move forward. So yeah, thanks for all for your input. So we can close the poll now and go to the next step. So that was the prioritization. The other part is now you have generated tons of ideas. You have clustered them into themes. You have used some mechanisms to converge into the best ideas. Now, what you need to do is before you go out and start building that product, in hiring the developers and designers to build that product, it's very important to storyboard the experience vision. So what is that experience vision going to look like from the end user's perspective? So I have this template essentially, and we all have been grown up by reading a lot of comic books, and these days a lot of stories, like 2-minute stories. These are all if you look at any of these movies, it's a concept that is coming from theater and movie, that you define the scenes on, in the first scene, you actually introduce the context and the user, and then you describe how the user would use that product or service. You'll continue describing in 6 to 9 steps, and then finally you describe how the users make it successful. This is one example from one of my previous projects. So we generate a lot of ideas, and this was more on the IoT space where we were enabling a lot of technology enabled, but this was to convey the focus of experience vision is that then you start realizing whether in the user's context, your idea actually makes sense or not. That's the whole purpose of this. So before you jump into building that, just telling the story, how the future experience of the end user would look like when this product or service is operational and is provided. So tell that story. And if that story is not jiving well, then you have to kind of rethink about it, right? So it's a very easy and quick way to kind of tell a story. Whenever you have some idea, some concept, you tell the story to other people to see whether they resonate with that, to really understand it. Another part which is linked, which is the next step, is prototyping. Actually, storytelling is also one way of prototyping, but prototyping is a very amazing way. And let me tell you some interesting aspect that why do we have to do prototyping and why do we have to do this storytelling is from the book by John Danner. I would encourage you to read that book, The Other F Word. And it's the other F, not the one that you're thinking, which is failure. Let me just tell you some examples. So imagine you start on the left side of this rectangle and the success is on the right side, but that is 100% success. So let me tell you, one of the best players in the world of sports and basketball is Michael Jordan. And he is kind of the epitome of excellence in basketball. You might be surprised to see that he missed more than half of the shots, the field goals. So he failed more than half the times. If you look at major IT projects that fail to deliver, 68%. It's amazing, right? 70% of startups die within 18 months, right? Which is probably not a surprise to a lot of you. 75%, 3 out of every 4 VC-funded startups do not return any money to the investors. New Year's resolutions. We all have those, right? 88% of them actually do not yield any results. New products that bomb, 95% of new products actually do not succeed in. And then the final one will be very revealing and interesting. 99% of the patents, they do not make any money, right? Patents are great inventions, but that does not mean that they're successful in the marketplace, right? So the whole point of this slide was that you have to embrace failure. Failure is our default. So a lot of times what happens is that you get tied up once you have the concept and idea generated, you get tied up so much that you do not consider the possibility of its failing. The point of this slide is to help you understand that the odds are against you. So you have to fail. Now, whether you can fail late or fast, That's what prototypes help you do, is help you fail fast. Because once you fail fast and you iterate over it, you have a better chance of finding the right product market fit, right? So prototypes help you fail fast and test your assumptions. Prototypes, again, as I mentioned, these are examples from storyboards that we did. The first prototype is just with a piece of paper and a pen describing in a story, or even just role playing, just conveying that a story verbally, so that you can that's the first version of the prototype. There's another example, right? So you describe, you be creative, you draw that out. And again, I want to highlight over here, these arts are not pretty. They don't need to be. They're just there to convey the concept, right? So do not consider, hey, I'm not a creative person, I'm not an artist, and you're just holding yourself back by making the perfect drawing. It's not about the drawing. It's about conveying your idea from your mind to the user's mind or other people's minds. It could be investor, it could be anybody else that you are validating the idea from. So I think that's what it is. These are another part. You use flip charts, you use some papers, and these are initial sketches of a patient service system, right? And that might really end up in becoming a dashboard. This is another inventory management system. You don't need to be fancy about it. This is not fancy. This is just on a flip chart with some post-its. You use post-its creatively to define the screens. I found these 3x5 post-its to be very good representation of a mobile phone screen. And then you can draw and then convey that idea. Now imagine if you had not done it and you had spent tens of thousands of dollars by hiring a team to build a mobile app and then shown it to the user, you would have wasted time, you would have wasted resources and time, and then found out that that idea did not work well. Compare that with just conveying that in a story, conveying that in a quick mock-up on Post-its, and then having it reviewed by the target users a few times. You will get so much more feedback about the applicability of it, feasibility of it. And this is another example of more kind of a fancy a mock-up as well. So the whole point of doing the storyboarding and creating the experience vision and prototyping was to test whether your idea is desirable by the user and it's feasible to do as well, right? So what we do is when we create these storyboards, we invite back the users, or we will take those storyboards to the users and get their feedback. Ask them to provide input. And if you have multiple versions of it, share multiple versions and get essentially their feedback into what does the user think is the best idea. This is one template in which, while you are getting feedback, again, you have to take feedback as a learning opportunity. You're not there to convince the user of the awesomeness of your idea. You are there to learn whether that idea is going to work in user's context, whether the user is going to like or not. So this is a very simple matrix that you can just draw on any piece of paper, and you can use thumbnails, whatever the user, when your user is going through that storyboard or that prototype, you see what the user like, what did the user not like, what were the questions that the user raised, and any other ideas that emerge out of that testing session. Here are some examples, right? When we did from the past sessions, that what were some of the things that the users liked about this prototype and story? What did they not like? What were some of the questions that came up, and what were some of the ideas? So experience vision, storyboarding, prototyping, testing. So I have created another poll for the audience. So Farhan, if you can open the prototyping poll and then let the participants answer some of the questions. I know that this session is very cramped into an hour and a half session. These are something which span multiple weeks, but I'll try to do my best. So mark all the options which you think are true. Why prototyping is important. Is prototyping important because it's important to convince the user of the awesomeness of your idea? Is it to gain feedback from the user? Is it to see what is working and what is not? It is to validate assumption. Is it to visualize solution concept? Is it to help identify potential use cases? Is it to avoid failures? So spend 10 seconds to mark all the ones that you think are relevant for prototype, why prototyping is important. All right, I'll give you 5 more seconds to mark the ones which you think are relevant. All right, Farhan, whenever we have enough responses, please share the results. Okay, so why is prototyping important? So to convince the user of the awesomeness of the idea, actually no, prototyping is not used for that purpose at all. As I mentioned, it's not about your idea. It's about what does the user think of your idea. So essentially it is to gain feedback from the user. The second one is right. It's the purpose of prototype is to gain feedback from the user, to see what is working and what is not. That's true as well. Prototyping quickly helps you validate what is working or not. Prototyping is there to validate assumption. Absolutely. This is such an important step in any of the endeavors. Prototyping is to visualize solution concept. Absolutely. The whole prototyping concept, and prototyping could be role playing, it could be storytelling, could be, and the vision experience creation, right? It's essentially to visualize. And also it's not just to visualize for the users, visualize in your own head as well. I've seen so many times when an idea looks pretty good on paper, but once you actually tell the story about it, you see that on paper it looked well. On story, it doesn't really jive well in the user's context. And I think that's a great way to really get that feedback earlier on. Prototype is to help identify potential use cases. Absolutely. Yes. And then finally, prototype is important to avoid failures. Well, actually, that was a tricky question as well. It's actually not to avoid failure, but embrace failure. Every prototype that you test with the user and it fails, or some aspect of the prototype fails, actually it is helping you fail fast. So it's not, again, your mindset should be not to avoid failures at all, because failure is our, as a human condition, default state, as I shared with you some examples. So embrace failure, look forward to the failures rather than avoiding failures. Prototyping is to help you fail fast. All right, we can close the poll. Thank you very much for all your participation on the poll. Let's go to the next step. The next step is essentially, as you go through the experience vision testing with the user, you identify some of the use cases. And again, as shared, you can think about it. What is who is the user? What is the action the user is trying to do? And then what is the result being expected? Now, the other point which I want to highlight, oops, I'm sorry about that, is, let me see if I can move this screen. Okay. So while you are documenting the use cases, you also, I think, start getting an idea of how is that feature, that use case will translate into features, essentially will help the user do the job better, faster, cheaper, or easier. I think you will start getting that idea. So this template might help you in doing that. The last part in this stage, which is the experience implication, which is more relevant. It is relevant in pretty much every context, but more relevant in the business context. So at this point, let me just summarize. You have created several versions of storyboards, prototypes. You have run tens of testing sessions with the end users, gotten the feedback, incorporated those feedbacks, created another version of the prototype, shared again with several users, gotten feedback, and you have done it multiple times. And now you have come to a nice solid experience vision, which you have validated with many of the users, many of the stakeholders. You're getting a good feel out of it, right? And then you have also gone through highlighting what are the use cases that experience vision is enabling. Now, a lot of times we forget to do one more thing, is experience implication. What are those implications on the end users? And I'll just go to the example part first. So future experience is on the top row. I think what you need to do is, and you may use this template or something similar, is each of those scene, of those steps in that future experience, what is the implication on other stakeholders that user is interacting with, connected with, or influencing, or being influenced by? Just highlighting that is gives you an understanding of the context of the user. Also, you look at what, especially in the business context, we do not work in a vacuum. We are interconnected. We are part of one peg in a whole sequence of chain. In a business setting, what are the internal processes that essentially might be dependent on this future or being influenced by this step? What are the related partner processes? And then finally, what are the data and systems where the user actually be dependent on? I think this is absolutely important to get an idea. A lot of times what happens is that we create the future experience vision and we think that in isolation it's great. But once we actually go out and talk about implementing in a business context, we find out that the IT organization needs to integrate your solution to existing systems. And at that point, then you go back again and then try to create those APIs with the right kind of parameters to create, to connect it. And this is, I'm giving you an example from technology because that's my background is, but you can think about any kind of thing. So for Rahil's example of business success coach. So if think about any other systems and data and processes and people, if your end user is dependent on, and how your future experience vision, your offering is gonna help in that. So with that, Farhan, if you can just open the next poll, which is the experience implications. And I want the participants to respond to this poll in 15 seconds. So mark all those aspects that you think are true for experience implications. So experience implication helps in identifying business benefits. It helps in uncovering overlooked dependencies on other stakeholders. It helps in having a better idea of applicability of solution in users' context. It helps in identifying reasons why a solution may be hard to adopt. And it also helps in identifying integration needs of the solution. So feel free in 10 seconds, mark the ones that you think are relevant here. I'll give you 5 more seconds. All right, Farhan, if the responses are in, please share the poll results and I'll go over the right answers. All right, here you go. So experience application helps in identifying business benefits. Well, actually, that's not really entirely true. Business benefits would not be, you might get some idea of it, but that's not the main goal. The main goal is the next 4 items, which is uncovering overlooked dependencies on other people, stakeholders, and processes. It's having a better idea of applicability of solution in user context. Absolutely, yes. The fourth one is identifying reasons why a solution may be hard to adopt. Absolutely. That's the whole purpose of this experience implication. And that's why it becomes so important. You identify what could be other aspects which might hold the user from adopting your solution. And then finally, identifying integration needs of the solution. Absolutely. So I think it gives you a holistic consideration of your solution in the user's context. So yeah, thank you very much for all your responses. So we can close the poll now, Farhan, and go to the next slide. So we are running a little late, so I'll try to rush it. So I think we're pretty much at the close of the session. Again, we have just come to the closure of the stage 2, which is how can you devise solution to understand feasibility. This is the 3+1, the 4th stage. Again, at the end of each stage or during that, always keep a tab on your assumptions. What are your assumptions that you're making which must hold true for your idea to work? Are these minor assumptions? Are these major assumptions? Are these critical assumptions? I think this is very important that even when you, in the first stage, you were able to understand the user's needs. In the second stage, you did prototyping, storytelling, created an experience vision after several iterations, identified experience implications, but still you will be making a lot of assumptions. Don't think that while going through that, you will have uncovered all the assumptions. It's true that during this stage device solution, you would have uncovered and kind of mitigated or figured out how to mitigate a lot of those assumptions, but still there'll be a lot of assumptions which would not have been understood. So keep a tap of those as well. So what we just did was coming back to the framework. In the previous session, we covered the desirability part. And in today's session, we covered feasibility, device solution. So what I want you to do is now, before we go to the Q&A, I want you to, and I'm sending this link to you. Click on this link and provide the feed forward about today's session. This will help me in getting an idea of how well I was able to articulate and convey the message. And in the meantime, Farhan, I think we can now open, while people are providing feedback for today's session, we can start addressing some of the Q&A.
Sure. Thank you so much, Mashood. As always, awesome session. For Q&A, I have two questions, but I'm having a little bit of a tough time understanding what those questions are. So what I would recommend is the participants who have asked those questions, if they can raise their hand, please, so I can open up their line. The first question was from, last name is Han. Will there be future events for fundraising if a startup has already market validation and is in growth stage?
So I don't think that I'll be doing any such session in the future, but I think Open as a platform has already done many of in-person sessions, and I think some online as well, perhaps, which has covered the fundraising part. We have great board members and charter members who have experience in the fundraising. I won't be the best person certainly for doing that, but please check on Open's website. And Farhan, if you want to just share if there are any upcoming session planned around fundraising, I think that would be helpful, but I personally won't be doing that.
Sure. Then there's a question from Sayed Ali. How job is helping the user?
So I'm unable to understand exactly what the intent of the question was.
Right.
Maybe I'll try to address it, unless Sayed, you are online, and feel free to speak up and clarify your question. But I think perhaps it is linked to the job to be done concept by Clay Christensen and how that helps the user. So around that. So again, what you need to think about, whatever your idea is, if it's a product or a service, think about, put yourself into your user's shoes, and understand what is the job the user trying to do, in which your product and service is going to help the user finish that job in a better, faster, easier, or cheaper way. That's the value proposition part, which we'll be going deeper into in next session. But that's what it is. And again, when you are doing prototyping, essentially your purpose of prototyping is to understand whether your prototype experience vision is actually helping the user do the job better, faster, cheaper, or easier.
So Ali, does that answer your question?
Yes.
Perfect. Again, just remind to all of those who have not yet provided feed forward, click on this last link, opendt_s3, and provide the feedback. Let me just quickly go through the rest of the slides. For next week, what I want you to do is and I don't know why this, let me just close this window here. Give me 1 second. Yeah, here it is. So for next week, I know that we only covered Rahil's aspect. So Rahil, I think you will get a lot of ideas from the responses today. Create that future experience vision and then email to me. For other participants as well, whatever idea you're working on, or if you have in mind of a problem, feel free to just send me an email about what your experience vision would be. And you don't need to worry about creating the storyboards with a tool or text. You can even just bullet point a storyboard. The user will do this, this, and that. But just be mindful that once you send that email, give me the context of what the user is. Again, going back to the stage one, what is the user? What is the context? Who is the user? What is the problem you're trying to address? And then what is the experience vision that you have created? If it's an idea of a product or of a service, doesn't really matter. what is that future experience going to look like? Email me that. Again, to recap, we covered so far in these 3 sessions, introduction to design thinking, the transform 3+1 framework. In last session, we went through understanding the problems. And then today's session, it was devising solution. I do understand that it was a lot of content crammed into an hour and a half, which is really hard, especially of an approach which requires multidisciplinary collaboration. It becomes really hard in this online challenge, but I really appreciate all your feedback. In the next few sessions, next sessions, we will be helping you build on this and then craft a business model around it. And then in final, we will go through all the assumptions that we are collecting. We would go through an approach of how to manage that and quantify that into risk, and then also do a quick recap in the final session. So that is it. Some of the useful resources at the end of each session, I try to share some useful resources. So 2 books I would recommend. The Other F Word by John Danner. You can also search, and he has a TED Talk too. And then Little Bets by Peter Sims. Both of the books are very important, and it highlights the importance of failing fast and embracing failure. And then finally, these 2 links. The first one gives you many brainstorming techniques, so it will be good for you to use yourself and your team. And then finally, there is a storytelling tool, which is by SAP App House, where I used to work till last year, and now I have moved into a different role within SAP. Check this out. This tool is essentially has a nice PowerPoint templates where you can use to convey your story vision into kind of a slideshow. And all these kind of graphics are there that you can leverage to convey your story better. So check these out. With that, any final questions or comments?
Sure. So Mashood, I'm going to open up the lines first I will open up for Ashok. You had a question as well, so please go ahead.
Yeah, sure. Hey, Alam. So this link from the sapling, is that a free tool or do we need to pay?
It's a free tool. It's a free tool. You can download it. It's an open source thing. You can download it.
Okay.
I've used it. In fact, now since end of actually back in August last year, I joined SAP Ariba to drive their future vision. And we actually created the future vision and depicted that future vision using this tool as well. So imagine it's a more than $1 billion company, and the future vision is conveyed in the form of stories for their target users. So this is being used, the storytelling techniques are being used by pretty much every company to define their future.
Okay, and my second question, so do we need to consider the technical feasibility during our ideation phase?
Not in ideation, but after ideation in the prioritization phase. And in the prioritization. So again, divergent thinking and convergent thinking, separate the two. In ideation, do not consider any kind of critical thinking or technical feasibility. But once you have tons of ideas, you start seeing themes emerging, then you start using technical feasibility to converge on the ideas which have the most potential for value to your end customer and their business, and technical feasibility. And then once you identify those, then you start converting them into an experience vision using storytelling techniques and prototyping to really get the feedback from the users.
Got it. Thank you.
All right, the next one is from Rahil. Rahil, please go ahead.
Great, thank you. My question is in regards to how to approach the key stakeholder responses I received for the 3 types of stakeholders, which is the target and the connected and influenced.
Yeah, so I think I briefly showed how you can use this. So this is the, when you are sharing these aspects, so I'm sharing over here, very simple is a 2x2 quadrant in which you can say when you are walking them through the experience vision or the prototype, what are the aspects that they liked? What are the aspects that they did not like? What were the questions that they raised, or the question that you raised in your head, and what are some of the ideas? I think these are a very quick way of capturing those feedback from the users.
Awesome, thank you.
All right, and the last one for the day from Usman Marie.
Hi, my question is regarding prototyping. So sometimes, actually not sometimes, a lot of times, user don't, how to keep user in the context of this prototyping. They go very in different directions. So how to keep the conversation focused on what you really want to achieve from the prototyping?
I think it's setting the context at the beginning of that session is very important. When you are approaching the user, be very clear that what is the purpose of the session, and very clear that our purpose of the session is that we have created a prototype to help solve this problem of yours. And within this 60-minute session, we will be giving you access to that prototype so that you can walk through it, and we will be observing how you interact with it, and we will be open to your feedback. And also convey that, okay, the benefit is that you will be one of the first adopters when the product actually comes out in the mind. So I think keeping that in mind, again, sometimes what happens is that the discussions go into different direction. So those are moments of enlightenment for you as well, that, hey, is your prototype not keeping them engaged to the task at hand? Maybe there's a flaw in the flow of the prototype, which kind of help them move in a different direction. Or the second part is you can be very empathetic and ask the question that, how do you think the topic that you are raising relates to the focus of the session? And if they will realize that, hey, this was a indirect indication that, hey, let's focus on that. So you need to be non-threatening, but also just asking question. Again, the power of asking questions is very important. And you can just ask that questions, and then they will get the message. Or they will, a lot of times what happens is that they will actually share with you some insight which you did not expect and which you did not really see. What the power of prototyping is that once you present it, you gain some even deeper level insights about the user's context and user's thoughts and feelings, right? So it really depends on situation, but you have to be very empathetic and actively listening on the session to find the cues, whether what is working, what is not working. Sometimes user will not be able to convey what is working, what they like exactly, or what is not working. When you are observing with an empathetic view, then it's your job to glean those insights and then use the template to kind of write down what the user liked, disliked, or ask questions.
Thank you. It's awesome.
Okay, if we have any final questions, otherwise I would really thank you for your active participation. I think these sessions, I know that it's challenging in this environment. These are remote sessions, but your active participations have made it really fulfilling. At least for me, I hope that it's useful for you as well. And again, just finally, the link that I provided for feed forward for today's session, if you haven't already provided feedback, please spend 2 minutes and provide that. That's going to help me tailor the next session, make it much better. Thank you very much.
Sure. Thank you so much, Mashood. As always, please follow us on LinkedIn and Facebook. I think our next session will be in 2 weeks' time, just because next week is the last week of Ramadan and Eid is the following day. So we'll try to schedule our 4th session the week after that. So to all the participants in this session, we will send out a follow-up email letting them know. And as always, we'll give them the first option to register for that next session. And keep you informed. If you have any questions, please feel free to email opensiliconvalley@gmail.com or Mashood directly, and we will respond to that. And with that, thank you so much, Mashood,
Thank you
for your time and commitment, and we'll look forward to hearing from you in 2 weeks.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye now.